He joked about marrying the blue-furred scout. Someday. Years later, she returned. The command deck of the starship Valor trembled as another volley of Crixian acid torpedoes crashed against its flickering shields. The air tasted of ozone and fear, consoles sparking as systems failed and recovered by sheer will. Captain Mason gripped the armrests of his chair so tightly his knuckles whitened, his jaw clamped hard enough to ache. Across the battered command deck, the fleet status display stuttered and glowed, showing a stark truth. 20 ships had become 9, and the survivors were little more than battered wrecks limping through the void. Around him, officers barked updates, voices ragged with exhaustion and terror. Lieutenant Commander Harper's voice cut through the chaos. Aft shields at 11%, hull breaches on decks 3, 5, and 8. Engineering reports they're sealing as fast as they can, but... Mason's mind raced, cataloging options, discarding each one as hopeless. For years, they had fought the insectoid Crixian horde, clinging to star systems by their fingernails. But now the fight had come to its end. They hovered in orbit above Vega Prime, a world already ruined by the endless war, making their last defiant stand. The main screen filled with the writhing mass of Crixian hive ships, their chitinous hulls pulsing with sickly green light, grown in spawning pits beyond human imagination. The enemy closed in, relentless and unified, tightening their trap with every passing moment. Mason pressed a control on his armrest, opening a channel to every soul aboard the Valor. His voice carried the weight of every sacrifice made along the way. All hands, brace for last stand. We hold the line. He watched as the Crixian swarm moved with predatory precision, their countless ships weaving an inescapable net. The deck beneath him shuddered again as acid munitions struck closer, gnawing at the Valor's defenses. Crew members exchanged grim, wordless glances. Even now, hope seemed a distant memory. Suddenly, a voice crackled from the comm station. Ensign Lee's eyes were wide with disbelief as she leaned forward, scanning the sensors. Unidentified ships emerging, Sector 14. Her words hung in the air, suspended between dread and desperate hope. On the view screen, space itself seemed to ripple and twist. Out of the darkness emerged a fleet of vessels, sleek and midnight blue, their hulls etched with pulsing alien runes. The ships moved with breathtaking speed and elegance, slicing into the Crixian formation like blades through silk. Energy lanced from their guns, every shot precise and devastating. Crixian ships burst apart, their acid cores boiling away in silent explosions. Lieutenant Commander Harper leaned in, voice hushed. "Sir, those ships aren't in any registry. I've never seen their like." The newcomers fought with a wild, unyielding discipline, predators unleashed after years in hiding. In moments, the tide of battle turned. Crixian vessels scattered in panic, only to be cut down in ruthless salvos. "Communications," Mason snapped. "Are they hailing us?" The comms officer nodded, pale with shock. "Incoming hail from the alien flagship, Captain." The main screen flickered, then filled with the face of a striking, blue-furred alien woman. She was athletic and sharp-featured, her ears pointed and alert atop her head, a long, expressive tail flicking behind her. Her muzzle was elegant, fox-like, but it was her eyes, piercing silver, burning with intelligence and memory, that stole the breath from Mason's chest. She spoke, voice low and smooth, with a hint of wildness. "Greetings, Mason. Did you think I would forget our bargain?" Around him, the bridge crew exchanged wary, confused glances. For Mason, time seemed to stop. Her voice was a ghost from another life, half remembered and never forgotten. The alien fleet pressed their advantage, shattering the heart of the Crixian formation. Hive ships cracked open, disgorging clouds of acid vapor as the newcomers moved through them with predatory grace. Mason snapped back to the present, heart pounding. "All ships, Rally on the unknowns. We fight as one. The battered remnants of the human fleet surged forward, following the midnight blue ships into the maelstrom. Together, they finished what seemed impossible, obliterating the last of the Crixian threat above Vega Prime. The final Crixian ship exploded, painting the void with a luminous cloud of acid and chitin. The war, at least in this corner of the stars, was over. Mason slumped back in his chair, feeling the weight of a decade's struggle pressing down on him. A memory surfaced, unbidden. 10 years earlier, on the wild moon of Vega 4b, his fighter had crashed behind enemy lines. He remembered cold, pain, the scent of moss and alien wildflowers, and the gentle touch of blue-furred hands. Kayla, a Vayari scout, had saved his life, tending wounds with a skill both gentle and fierce. She was unlike any creature he'd known. Athletic, her fur the color of twilight, a long tail curled protectively around her. In her small shelter, while storms raged outside, they had traded stories. She spoke of her clan's ancient traditions, of honor and survival on the edge of extinction. He told her of Earth, of starfleets and the burdens of command, and the ache of never belonging. A fragile, undeniable bond had formed, forged in fire and loneliness. When rescue came, Mason called down to her, half laughing, half desperate. "A woman as fierce as you deserves a hero's pledge. I'll come back for you, Kayla of the Vayari." She had grinned, wild and free, and the image had haunted him through every battle since. Now, in the Valor's battered hangar, Kayla strode toward him. No longer a scout, but a warrior queen, regal and armored, blue fur marked by the scars of 100 battles. Vayari guards flanked her, eyes wary and weapons ready. She stopped before him, tail flicking, and her gaze sparkled with mischief and challenge. "Captain Mason," she greeted, her voice edged with laughter. "You've grown into your promise." Mason bowed, suppressing a smile. "Welcome aboard, Kayla. You saved us, again." She laughed, a rich, wild sound, and stepped closer, close enough for him to catch her earthy, untamed scent. "I have come to claim what was promised," she said, voice lowering to a purr. Tension shimmered between them. The crew around them found sudden reasons to be elsewhere, the hangar emptying in moments. Mason's heart hammered in his chest. "Perhaps we should speak privately," he suggested. "Yes," Kayla agreed, her lips curling into a smile edged with mischief and old wounds. She followed him through the corridors, silent but for the soft pad of her feet on the metal deck. In his quarters, she prowled with feline grace, trailing a claw lightly over his battered desk, her gaze never leaving his. "You kept your word," she murmured, voice threaded with something raw. "You became the leader I saw in you." Mason touched the scar on his cheek, a souvenir from a war that refused to end. War leaves its mark. Kayla's silver eyes softened, the warrior's mask slipping. "Do you remember your promise?" "I remember the words of a desperate pilot," Mason said, voice rough. She stepped closer, heat radiating from her. Were they only words? He saw pain and hope flicker in her eyes, emotions laid bare. "Why now?" he asked, barely above a whisper. Her mask fell away entirely, her voice trembling on the edge of loss. "Because, my pledged mate, the Crixians have taken everything from me, and I need a strategist's mind to reclaim what's lost." An emergency council convened in Valor's primary briefing chamber, the air crackling with tension. 3 admirals, Rourke, Singh, and Petrov, hovered in blue-white holographic form above the long table, their gazes heavy with judgment. The battered remnants of Mason's command staff stood at attention, and every flicker of static from the hologram projectors seemed to underline the gravity of what had transpired. Admiral Rourke's image loomed largest, his voice thunderous. "You allied with an unknown species because of a 10-year-old promise?" His virtual face twisted in incredulity. Mason stood ramrod straight at the head of the table, his uniform scorched and stained with the smoke of battle. He met Rourke's fury with unflinching resolve. "Sir, we would have been annihilated without the Veyari intervention. Our shields were failing. The Crixians had us surrounded. There was no alternative." "And these Veyari just happened to appear at the moment of our greatest need?" Rourke pressed, his tone cold, skeptical. "Their timing was fortunate," Mason replied, choosing his words with care. "But their strength is undeniable. They turned the tide in minutes. Our fleet owes its survival to them." Admiral Singh interjected, her voice smooth but edged with steel. "Unknown technology is a risk, Captain. For all we know, their ships could be Trojan horses, their weapons destabilizing to our own systems. What assurances do you offer?" Mason kept his tone calm, holding back the tremor of exhaustion in his muscles. "The Crixians are the greater threat. The Veyari have proven themselves in battle. We must accept allies where we find them, or we will not survive to see the next dawn." The admirals fell silent, exchanging glances across the flickering streams of data that separated their realities. Rourke's eyes narrowed. "Terms?" he demanded. A current of unease rippled through the chamber. Mason hesitated, feeling every eye upon him. "An alliance, sealed by marriage, between their war leader and myself." The silence that followed was absolute, more suffocating than vacuum. Rourke's gaze sharpened, as if he were seeing Mason for the first time. "Dismissed," he said, voice clipped and unreadable. Mason left the council chamber with the echoes of their doubt trailing after him. The hangar deck was a maelstrom of uneasy cooperation. Human engineers and Veyari technicians worked in wary tandem, the sleek blue hulls of alien craft side by side with battered Terran shuttles. Eyes flicked to one another, measuring, judging. Lieutenant Commander Harper appeared at his side, her brow furrowed. "Reports of clashes on the lower decks, sir," Harper said in a low voice. "The Veyari are correcting our maintenance routines. Tempers are flaring." On the other side of the bay, Elder Jax watched everything with the implacable patience of a predator. The grizzled Veyari wore his age in the silver of his fur and the cold gleam of a cybernetic eye. He surveyed the uneasy alliance with arms folded, expression unreadable. Mason strode over. "Elder Jax, where's your leader?" Jax's lips twitched in a wry approximation of a smile. "In her quarters, reviewing your tactics. She is thorough." Mason nodded, considering the fractures already forming beneath the surface. "We need a show of unity. I'm ordering a joint strike, targeting a Crixian signal array in the asteroid belt. Your warriors and my pilots, side by side." Jax's eye flickered approvingly. "Our teeth in your claws, together. It is wise." Later, in the briefing room, Mason stood before a holomap of the Crixian relay station, the blue glow of the display lighting the faces around him, human and Veyari alike. He pointed at the rotating schematic, his voice steady. "We disable the outer defenses with precision strikes. Once inside, Veyari boarding teams will sweep the station, secure the command core, and extract all data." He let his gaze sweep over the assembled crews. "Remember, cooperation, not rivalry. We must anticipate each other. Watch, learn, adapt." Ensign Lee raised her hand, frowning. "Sir, their tactics are unpredictable. They improvise. Our pilots could be caught off guard." Before Mason could reply, the door slid open with a hiss, and Kayla entered, armored from shoulder to tail tip in gleaming Veyari battleplate. Every eye turned to her. She moved with the effortless power of a born predator, silver eyes taking in the room in an instant. "Adapt," Kayla said, her voice carrying quiet authority. "The Crixians expect order. Let them face chaos with purpose." She met Mason's eyes, and something unspoken passed between them. A challenge, a promise. The battle unfolded in a storm of fire and steel. Human pilots darted between the jagged rocks of the asteroid belt, weaving through fields of acid mines and Crixian turrets. their ships dancing with the kind of precision only desperation could hone. Veyari strike teams rode in armored pods, streaking alongside their human counterparts, howling war cries that echoed across the comms. On the Valor's bridge, Harper's voice trembled with awe. "They improvise, sir. They're hunting." Every move is calculated chaos. Within the relay station, Veyari warriors exploded from their pods, plasma blades slicing through Crixian defenders in a blur of blue fur and burning light. Human marines pressed forward, covering angles, providing disciplined fire. For the first time, their strengths meshed, precision and ferocity, order and wildness. The relay's core fell in minutes. Jax's team transmitted a burst of encrypted data, the Veyari elder's voice crackling over the comm. "We have coordinates for 14 Crixian hives. The heart of the swarm is exposed." In the aftermath, Kayla joined Mason at the edge of the hangar, her armor spattered with Crixian ichor, her tail high. "Your pilots impressed me," she said, her tone honest and edged with something warmer. "Yours as well," Mason replied, a rare smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. "This could work." Her answering smile was sharp, full of teeth. "Yes, it could." Night fell across Valor's decks, the tension of battle replaced by something more subtle: possibility. Mason found Kayla alone in the star map chamber, her blue fur aglow in the projected starlight. Galaxies wheeled overhead, data streams winding through her silhouette. She traced the lines with one claw, lost in thought. "You're avoiding me," Mason said softly, stepping into the light. "Am I?" she replied, not looking up. Her tail flicked, restless. He watched her for a moment, searching for cracks in her composure. The Council approved the alliance, conditionally: treaty, technology exchange, and the marriage pact. She turned to face him, her expression unreadable. "You seem uncertain, Captain." Mason's voice was quiet, but carried the weight of a decade's regret. "Why does this matter so much? Why hold on to a promise for 10 years? Kayla's eyes reflected starlight, her voice even and steady. "A pledge between warriors is sacred for the Veyari, a vow of strength freely given. It is not made lightly." He swallowed, guilt sharp in his chest. "I didn't know." "But I did, and I waited." Her composure finally wavered, pain slipping through the cracks. "Weeks after you left Vega 4B, the Crixians came. They devoured everything. I was away, hunting with the far scouts. When I returned, only ashes remained. Of millions, only 1,000 survived. We are the last pack now." Mason's breath caught. The magnitude of her loss, the weight she bore, pressed against him like gravity. "You've hunted them ever since." She nodded, a slight motion heavy with years. "Yes. They multiply faster than we can destroy them. But I remembered your promise. I need your mind. I need victory." He looked at her then. Not as an ally, not as an alien, but as someone who had lost nearly everything and still stood unbroken. The marriage pact, he realized, was not just tradition, it was survival. A lifeline between two peoples on the edge of extinction. "If I accept," Mason asked, voice rough, "what am I?" She stepped closer, her silver gaze unwavering. "Alpha of the Veyari, last hope of the last pack, the hand that will bring vengeance." "And if I refuse?" he asked, afraid of the answer. Her voice was soft but unyielding. "Then I fight alone until the last Veyari falls. But I do not think you will refuse, Captain." Mason searched her eyes and found not desperation, but faith. He nodded, the final barrier falling away. "When do we start?" Kayla's smile was slow and fierce. "Now, Mason. We hunt together, until the stars are ours again." Mason stood alone in the star map chamber, the hush broken only by the distant hum of Valor's engines. Hollow stars drifted beneath his hands, an infinite cascade of worlds. Some burning, some silent, some nothing but memory. Red markers pulsed and flickered across the map, each a scar on the face of the galaxy, each a lost world. Their names meant little to most now, just designations and after-action reports. But Mason knew what they meant to Kayla. He remembered her voice, raw and distant, as she'd spoken of Vayar, the homeworld she could never return to. He closed his eyes, seeing it through her memories. The twin moons, silver and blue, casting their glow across endless grasslands. The singing rivers threading through crystal forests. The scent of wildflowers on the wind. He heard the echo of laughter, the pounding of paws, the song of life in a world now consigned to ash. All gone, devoured by the Crixian tide. His promise, once a half-serious vow offered in a moment of desperate hope, had become a lifeline between what was lost and what might still be saved. Footsteps. A light, measured tread, claws clicking softly against metal. Mason turned, and Kayla entered, the starlight painting her blue fur with shifting constellations. Her armor was gone, her guard stripped away. She stopped, uncertainty visible in the way her tail curled and uncurled behind her. Her silver eyes met his, vulnerable for the first time. "I shouldn't have told you," she said quietly, words trembling at their edges. Mason stepped forward, letting the pain and gravity of her story settle between them. "It's my burden now," he replied, voice low, inviting her in. "You've carried it alone too long." She hesitated, then crossed the space to stand at his side. For a moment, the silence was a living thing, charged with all the words left unsaid. "You've decided?" she asked, searching his face. He nodded, resolute. "I decided when you told me about Vayar, when you trusted me with your truth." His eyes lingered on the red markers, the litany of worlds that had become their shared enemy. "I can't turn away from this. Not from you." Kayla drew a slow breath, her composure fragile. "Is this just about revenge? About using human help to finish what we could not?" Mason's gaze sharpened. "Is it for you? Is this alliance just a weapon?" He stepped closer, voice gentle but unyielding. "I need to know what's real." Her ears flicked, caught by the conflict within her. "At first, yes," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "At first it was only vengeance, only survival. I needed a mind as ruthless as the Crixians, a leader to match them. But now," she lifted a trembling hand and traced the old scar that cut across his cheek. "Now I see you understand loss. You understand what it means to lose everything and keep fighting anyway." Her claws brushed the line of his jaw, tender and fierce. "We are both shaped by war, both survivors." The touch sent a shiver through Mason, the kind that came from old wounds meeting new hope. For so long, every caress had felt like a luxury he couldn't afford, but in Kayla's eyes, he saw a future that was not only survival, but something like belonging. He reached up, his hand covering hers. "I've never met anyone who sees me, who knows the weight I carry." Kayla stepped closer, so near that her breath stirred the air between them. "The vow must be sealed," she whispered, voice rough with longing and centuries of tradition. "In the old way, by fire, by touch, by soul. Will you accept?" Mason answered not with words, but with a kiss. Fierce, desperate. 10 years of longing compressed into a single, shattering moment. Kayla responded with wild hunger, her arms pulling him close, her body arching to meet his. The years and the scars fell away. Her claws tangled in his hair, her tail curling around his waist as if to anchor herself to him. They moved together, drawn into a tide neither could resist. Mason's hands traced the lines of her back, feeling the ripple of muscle beneath soft fur, memorizing each scar as if it were his own. Kayla's lips traveled the plane of his jaw, the hollow of his throat, her breath warm and ragged. Their passion was not gentle, but it was healing, each wound acknowledged, each story shared in whispers and caresses. In the starlit chamber, they became something new, a union of fire and will, of grief and hope. Kayla bared her soul in murmured Vayari, ancient words that Mason did not know but felt in his bones. He answered with his own, a vow in English that needed no translation. You are not alone. Not ever again. After, they lay entwined beneath the projected stars, her heartbeat steady against his chest. Kayla rose on one elbow, gaze luminous. The pact is sealed, she intoned, voice ringing with ceremony and joy. You are Alpha of the Vayari, last leader of the last pack. Do you accept? Mason met her gaze, strength flowing from her into him. I accept. I swear, I will not rest until the Crixians are finished, until your people have a home again, until every promise is kept. Kayla's smile was fierce and bright, her fangs flashing in the soft light. Let the hunt begin, my mate. She pressed her brow to his, their breaths mingling, a promise not just to each other, but to all who still fought and hoped. For the first time in years, Mason felt the future open before him, not as a void, but as a trail to be run, side by side. The last pack would not go quietly, and neither would he. The asteroid belt of Sigma 13 was a graveyard, an endless stretch of shattered moons and planetary corpses, the debris field so dense that the sunlight fractured into 1,000 haunted shadows. Wreckage spun on slow, silent orbits, the bones of lost civilizations, the aftermath of ancient battles. It was here that Mason and Kayla made their stand, the war table alive with shifting blue and red symbols, the fate of fleets hanging on a razor's edge. Mason and Kayla leaned together over the holomap in the Valor's strategy room, the glow washing over them in cold starlight. Human and Vayari tacticians gathered in a loose circle, tension coiled in every stance. Elder Jax, scarred and ever watchful, studied the swirling icons with a hunter's caution. The Crixians learn quickly, Jax rumbled, one cybernetic eye glinting as he tracked the simulated enemy formations. They adapt to every pattern, every trick. Mason grinned, a glint of reckless confidence in his eyes. But their instincts betray them. They swarm without caution when they scent easy prey. We give them what they want, a convoy fat with supplies, ripe for slaughter. They'll come in droves, blind to the teeth waiting in the dark. Kayla's blue fur shimmered in the low light, her tail sweeping in anticipation. Your mind finds order in chaos, my mate. They will not see the jaws until they have already stepped inside. Her voice was low, edged with admiration and something wilder. The plan came together with swift precision. Human warships, battered but reliable, would form the decoy convoy, lights burning, engines sputtering, transmissions filled with feigned distress. Hidden among the asteroids, Vayari raider craft nestled like coiled predators, silent and nearly invisible, their hulls blending with the swirling stone and ice. Mason's voice was crisp, every order a promise. Harper, have the engineering team scatter sensor ghosts throughout the belt. We want them thinking this is just another shattered supply run. Jax, your strike teams will wait for my signal. No heroics until the lead ships are fully committed. Elder Jax bared his teeth in a satisfied grin. The Vayari were born to hunt among broken worlds, Captain. Kayla leaned in, her shoulder brushing Mason's. And I will be by your side on the bridge, she murmured, silver eyes intent on him. Our place is here, commanding the storm. The trap was set. Valor and her allied ships slipped into the heart of the debris field, each vessel threading a treacherous path through tumbling boulders and frozen clouds. On the main screen, the decoy convoy flickered and spun, a picture of easy plunder. The Crixians came, just as Mason had predicted. 9 warships in a tight predatory formation, chitinous hulls gleaming with venomous light. They poured from the far edge of the belt, sensors locked on the helpless convoy, acid batteries already warming. The enemy formation broke apart, ships racing one another to the feast. Mason's heart thundered. All units, hold your positions. Wait for it. On Valor's bridge, Kayla stood beside him, her presence a balm and a weapon. Her claws tapped a nervous rhythm on the rail, but her voice was calm. Now, Mason. He nodded, giving the signal. All ships, spring the trap. From the asteroids, Vayari raiders erupted like shadows given form. Their engines flared blue, weaving through the rocks with impossible agility. Human cannons opened fire in precise, calculated volleys, beams slicing through the chaos. The first Crixian ship exploded in a blossom of acid and flame, then another and another as the ambush closed like a fist. Kayla's lips curled in satisfaction as the enemy lines broke. Perfect, she murmured, watching the Crixian ships writhe in confusion. You made them dance, my clever human. On screen, Vayari boarding teams swarmed the crippled vessels, blue-furred warriors spilling from pods, plasma blades gleaming. Human marines followed, covering angles and driving the enemy into bottlenecks. The battle was swift and brutal. 7 enemy warships torn apart, their hulks spinning off into the void. 2 more forced into surrender, their crews overwhelmed. Only one Crixian ship escaped, limping away, engines trailing sparks. Allied losses were minimal, just a few damaged hulls, a handful of wounded. Relief rippled through the Valor's bridge, the tension easing as the last enemy signal faded. Kayla turned to Mason, her eyes burning with approval and pride. You clever human, she whispered, her hand splayed over his chest, feeling the thunder of his heart beneath the uniform. You made them dance. They never saw the snare until it snapped shut. The bridge crew busied themselves with status reports and battle logs, pretending not to notice the current between captain and war leader. Harper's lips twitched with a half-suppressed smile. Elder Jax nodded, satisfied. Later, in the quiet of the armory, Mason checked the status of the captured Crixian weapons, his mind still whirling with the afterglow of victory. He didn't hear Kayla's approach until her shadow fell across him. She pressed him back against the cold steel wall, her body flush with fierce energy. Before he could speak, she captured his mouth with hers, hungry, demanding, wild. Her hands tangled in his hair, claws gentle but unyielding. Mason's breath caught, his control slipping as he returned her kiss with equal fervor. She pressed closer, every line of her body claiming him, her tail winding around his leg. You are mine, Kayla growled, her fangs grazing his lip. My alpha, my hunter. He cupped her face, breathless and laughing, his forehead pressed to hers. Yours, always. Kayla's arms encircled him, her body trembling with the aftershock of battle and desire. For a heartbeat, they simply held each other, warriors bound by promise, victory, and need. She drew back, eyes glowing. The hunt is only beginning. But I can taste victory, Mason. With you beside me, there is nothing we cannot take back. Mason held her close, the scent of ozone and fur filling his senses. The future was uncertain, the enemy still vast, but in that moment he knew the tide had turned. Together they would reclaim every world lost to the Crixians. Together, they would hunt until hope was more than just a story told beneath shattered moons. In Valor's medbay, Mason sat on the edge of a sterile bed, a burn snaking up his forearm, the skin still angry and raw beneath hastily applied gel. The overhead lights gleamed cold and sharp, bouncing off the metal fixtures, and the scent of antiseptic hovered in the air. The ship's doctor tried to approach with a dermal regenerator, but Kayla intercepted her with a single look, a silent command that brooked no refusal. I will tend him, Kayla said, her voice even, though her eyes flicked with something fierce and private. The doctor flustered, nodded, and retreated, leaving Mason and Kayla alone in the hush. Kayla knelt beside him, her hands surprisingly gentle as she peeled back the makeshift bandage. The blue of her fur was vivid against the pallor of Mason's skin. She worked with practiced care, dabbing ointment, her claws barely grazing him. "Among my people," she said softly, "warriors care for their mates. It is tradition. Trust is shown in wounds, not words." Mason studied her, struck by the vulnerability she allowed only here, behind closed doors. He reached out, fingers lifting her chin so she would meet his gaze. "Is that what this is, Kayla? More than a pact? More than survival?" A shadow flickered across her features. "I don't know. Love is rare for us. We live and die in packs, but deep bonds, those are legend. I thought I'd never feel it." Her voice dropped, almost lost in the hum of machines. He traced a scar that curved across her shoulder, old and pale against the twilight of her fur. "Tell me about these. Each one has a story, doesn't it?" She nodded, exhaling. "This was my first hunt, 13 years. I brought down a bristle beast twice my size." Her lips twitched at the memory. She pointed to another scar, deeper, along her ribs. "The fall of Vayar, 21. I tried to defend the northern river, but the swarm was endless." Mason's gaze softened. "You were to marry then. You told me once." Kayla nodded, her voice far away. "A Vayari noble, chosen by my elders. He was brave, but when I looked at him, I felt nothing. Duty, not fire." She leaned in, her breath warm against his cheek. "With you, I burn," she whispered. "With you, I feel alive." He pulled her into his arms, holding her as if he could shield her from every memory, every wound. "You blame yourself for what happened to Vayar. I see it in your eyes." A tear slipped down Kayla's cheek, and she wiped it away with the back of her hand, almost angrily. "I was away, hunting in the southern hills. If I'd been there, maybe—" Mason stopped her, his grip steady. "If you'd been there, you'd have died too. Someone has to remember. Someone has to carry the story. That's not weakness, Kayla. That's survival." She bowed her head, letting his words settle over her like a balm. After a moment, she resumed her careful ministrations, wrapping his forearm in a fresh bandage, her touch lingering, reverent. "Thank you," Mason murmured as she finished. Kayla managed a small, crooked smile. "Don't thank me yet, Captain. Your recovery will be intense. I am thorough." He laughed, surprising them both with the ease of it. "I can handle intense." Her eyes danced, but then her mood sobered. She checked over her shoulder, making sure they were alone, then drew a data chip from her belt. "The data from the captured Crixian ships. It's worse than we thought." She slid the chip into the bedside console. A projection flickered to life. Schematics, fleet deployments, coded transmissions. "They're preparing a final assault on the core worlds. 6 months, maybe less. If we wait, we lose everything." Mason's mind raced, calculations running behind his eyes. "We need to strike at the source. A breeding hive, Hive Prime. It's 3 systems away, heavily guarded, but maybe not for a surprise attack. If we can hit it before their next wave, we break their cycle. Cut off the head." Kayla's jaw tightened. "You'll need to infiltrate. Crixian ships, Crixian codes. Plant a fusion device at the heart of their spawning grounds, then escape before the swarm closes in." He met her gaze, unflinching. "You're coming with me. I won't leave you behind." She stepped closer, her presence filling the room. "We are bound, you and I. Where you go, I go. That is my vow." 3 days of furious preparation followed. The hangar hummed with activity, engineers retrofitting stolen Crixian corvettes, commandos running through boarding drills, Vayari hunters painting their armor in ritual stripes. Mason briefed the team again and again, every word crisp with urgency. He chose his squad: 4 hand-picked human commandos, veterans all, and 6 of Kayla's finest hunters, each carrying a plasma blade and a lifetime of grudges. The plan was simple, brutal, and left little room for error. "The Valor will ram Hive Prime at maximum velocity," Mason said at the final briefing, his voice cutting through the tension. "We breach the living walls, plant the warhead, and fight our way out. Once the core detonates, the Hive collapses. We have 40 minutes from breach to escape, or we die with the enemy." Ensign Lee swallowed, her voice tight. "What about the Crixian Queen? If she's there—" Kayla's eyes narrowed, her voice cold and certain. "We end her. The swarm dies with its queen." The hour arrived. Valor ran dark, shields down, engines screaming as the Crixian corvettes launched ahead, broadcasting stolen codes. Hive Prime loomed, a monstrous lattice of living tissue and biometal, larger than any station Mason had ever seen. Its surface writhed with drones, the air alive with the scent of acid and death. Valor crashed through the hive's membrane, a shockwave splitting organic walls and flooding tunnels with fire. Mason led the charge, Kayla at his side, blades and rifles blazing. The team pushed into grotesque tunnels, every surface pulsing with alien life, sinew, bone, the stink of decay. The hive fought back. Drones swarmed, acid spatters burning flesh and armor. Then came the Queen's psychic assault, a wave of terror and despair that nearly drove them to their knees. Human commandos faltered, hands clutching their heads. Even the Vayari staggered, claws scrabbling for purchase. But Kayla stood firm, her howl a beacon through the storm. "With me!" she roared, and the hunters rallied, charging forward. Mason gritted his teeth, forcing his mind past the pain, his world shrinking to the next step, the next breath. They reached the throne chamber, a cavernous maw lined with egg sacs and bioluminescent veins. The Crixian queen reared up, monstrous and terrible, her psychic shriek splitting the air. Kayla met her charge with an energy blade blazing, blue light clashing with the queen's chitinous limbs. Mason moved in tandem, his rifle spitting fire, until he saw the queen's lifelines, glistening cords running from her body to the spawning chamber. He slashed them, sparks and ichor spraying, as Kayla drove her blade deep into the queen's side. The hive shuddered, walls cracking as the queen howled in fury. "Now!" Mason shouted, hurling the fusion warhead into the queen's gaping maw. Kayla grabbed his hand, pulling him back as alarms wailed. The team ran, tunnels collapsing behind them, the hive tearing itself apart in spasms of agony. They reached the surface, racing for the last escape pod as the walls buckled and the sky turned white. Mason and Kayla dove inside, slamming the hatch as the fusion device detonated, a sun blooming at the heart of Hive Prime. Through the viewport, Mason watched the hive collapse, the queen's reign ending in fire and silence. Kayla squeezed his hand, her grip fierce, her eyes shining with victory and tears. "Together," she whispered. "Always." Mason pulled her close, the future uncertain but hope blazing in the space between their joined hands. The destruction of Hive Prime sent shockwaves through the galaxy. News spread faster than light. Crixian war signals stuttered, fractured, then fell silent. Entire sectors that had lived under the gnawing threat of the swarm looked up at their fractured skies with a hope that had long felt forbidden. Crixian forces, once a seamless tide, now retreated in confusion, their unity broken by the loss of their queen and the catastrophic implosion of their spawning heart. For the first time in years, the stars themselves seemed to breathe again. Aboard the Valor, survivors rebuilt, steel and synthbone, Vayari alloys welded to Terran circuitry. Human engineers and Vayari artisans worked side by side, their laughter echoing through the corridors where screams had been all too common. The ship's silhouette changed, elegant human lines merging with Vayari curves, its hull gleaming with runes and battered insignia alike. Kayla stood in the hangar, watching as armorers fitted her with new battle plate. The design was a living testament to the Alliance. Terran ablative mesh, layered over Vayari chitin, her clan sigils etched beside the insignia of valor. Mason approached, taking in the sight of her in the hybrid armor. She met his eyes, pride shining in her gaze. "We've shown them they can be beaten," Kayla said, flexing her claws, the plates shifting with feline grace. "Now we press on. Now we hunt the hunters." Mason nodded, feeling the weight and the promise of her words. In the war room, the new alliance gathered, a council of human admirals, their uniforms crisp and medals gleaming, and Vayari elders, fur brushed to ceremonial splendor, eyes sharp and old. Hollow charts filled the room, depicting the front lines. Crixian fleets were massing at the far edge of known space, the largest force ever recorded. Elder Jax's voice rumbled through the chamber. "They are preparing a final strike. This is not the end. It is the beginning of their last hunt. Earth is their target." Admiral Rourke leaned forward, jaw set. "How long do we have?" Jax's single eye narrowed, the red glow stark. 6 weeks, perhaps less. They will come in numbers that blot out the stars." Rourke turned to Mason, his tone suddenly formal. "You led the assault on Hive Prime. You forged this alliance. The fleet needs you at the helm." He drew a polished insignia from his belt. "Effective immediately, you are promoted to Admiral." Mason accepted the rank with a nod, his heart pounding, not with fear, but with the fierce certainty of purpose. He glanced at Kayla, who stood at his side, her tail flicking with pride. Days became a blur. Strategy sessions, war games, the relentless rhythm of preparation. Human officers and Vayari pack leaders sparred and shared tactics, blending precision and instinct into something new. Kayla's hunters trained alongside Terran Marines, their roars echoing through the gunnery decks. Trust grew in the crucible of shared danger. In the quiet moments between battles, Mason and Kayla found brief sanctuary in their quarters, exchanging stories, laughter, and the warmth of touch. One night, as a meteor shower streaked past their viewport, Mason turned to her, voice raw and honest. "I love you," he said, the words simple and unadorned. "Whatever tomorrow brings, know that." Kayla's smile was fierce and gentle at once. She cupped his face in her hands, claws trailing along his jaw. "I love you too, Mason. In war and in peace. Together, we will win, because we must." The day of reckoning arrived with the dawn. The battle for Earth began as shadows lengthened across the homeworld, the Crixian armada blotting out the stars in a vast, living tide. Their ships moved as a single, monstrous organism, acid cannons charging, hive signals screaming through every frequency. On the bridge of the Valor, Mason's voice rang out, steady and unyielding. "All ships, this is Admiral Mason. Today, we fight for every free world, every life the Crixians have tried to erase. Remember, they can fall. We have seen it. We have made it so." Kayla stood at his side, armored and radiant, her silver eyes fixed on the enemy lines. She turned to her pack, raising her blade. "Vayari, with me! We hunt today, not just for vengeance, but for the future. Let them remember who we are." The first salvos lit the void, human tactics weaving intricate traps, Vayari raiders darting through the chaos with wild, lethal grace. Ships died in bursts of fire and acid, debris spinning past the windows. Kayla led her hunters in boarding actions, every victory punctuated by howls that echoed back to Mason's heart. He commanded the fleet with iron precision, guiding ships through impossible maneuvers, trusting the bond forged in pain and hope. The battle was cataclysmic, hours of fire and blood, of losses counted in ships and lives. The turning point came when Mason, scanning the shifting chaos of the battlefield, located the Crixian command ship. Its silhouette was unmistakable, pulsing with a sickly green light at the heart of the swarm. "There," Mason called, his voice cutting through the noise. "All guns, focus fire on the command ship, now!" The fleet responded, hundreds of beams converging. The command ship buckled under the onslaught, its carapace shattering. For a moment, the Crixian hive signals faltered. Then, like a dam bursting, the enemy formation collapsed, ships veering off course, drones self-destructing, acid weapons falling silent. The swarm dissolved, their unity broken forever. By dusk, the last Crixian vessel was destroyed. The battered defenders watched as the debris field drifted, the silence both eerie and miraculous. On the bridge, cheers broke out, humans and Vayari embracing, tears streaming down battle-worn faces. Later, Mason and Kayla stood together on the observation deck, high above the rebuilt Earth. The sun crested the horizon, spilling gold and blue across the clouds and city spires. For a long moment they simply watched, silent in the afterglow of survival. "What now?" Mason asked softly, his hand finding hers. Kayla squeezed his fingers, her eyes shining. "Now we rebuild. Our peoples will heal, and our children will unite what war has tried to keep apart." Mason turned to her, hope luminous in his eyes. "I love you, Kayla. Not just in the shadow of battle, but in every sunrise to come." She smiled, radiant as the dawn. "And I love you, Mason. Now and always." Together they faced the sunrise. A new era stretched before them, uncertain yet shining with promise. Partners, lovers, leaders, survivors, they stood ready for whatever the galaxy would bring, side by side as the first light of peace spilled over their world. This brings our story to a close. Don't forget to hit subscribe, give the video a like, and share in the comments which part you enjoyed the most. Our team will truly appreciate your support. There are plenty more exciting stories waiting for you on our channel. See you in the next video.